Hello, join me for a little chat. Oh, about EMPs. I've heard it bounced around a lot lately. Discussions of EMPs, which is electromagnetic pulse, generally referring to some sort of a weapons attack. Well, let's have a little fireside chat about that next to the old Coleman lantern, which is EMP resistant. So I actually happen to have some experience with EMP weaponry. Very limited experience, but it's still a pretty cool story, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you that. About 22 years ago, I was working in a machine shop at Texas Tech University, undergraduate student, and my teacher, the shop teacher, his name was Norman Jackson, and I really like Norman Jackson. And one day, Norman comes up to me, and he says, "Charlie, do you want to see if you can help these grad students build a bomb?" And I was like, yeah, sure. And it was all government sanctioned and everything. So what was going on was there was a group of graduate students that were working with the military, and they were working with a professor named Dr. Hashimi, who was a material science professor, and they were seeing if the insurgents at that time, and we were in the Iraq War, they were trying to see if the insurgents could develop an IED, an improvised explosive device that would function as a close range EMP. And at first I didn't know what exactly I was building, because they just said they needed a casing, And this is the actual casing. I happen to have one. Not sure if you can see it with our mood lighting here, but it's just an aluminum casing. And what they had me do at the time was this got dropped in liquid nitrogen, and so I had to walk across campus to get a bucket of liquid nitrogen, and then walk back to the shop building with this steaming cauldron of liquid nitrogen, and then take this little guy, or one like it. I don't know, I guess this one had a defect. They didn't want to use it or something. But there was a copper sleeve. You can see there's that edge to it, the lip. There's a copper sleeve that went over it. So my job was to take and heat the copper with a torch, and then drop this one in liquid nitrogen, and then take the two and press them together very quickly on a mechanical press. Well, it worked, but it get about halfway, and then it would seize up because of the heat transfer, and then you have to just power through it the rest of the way to get it to fit. So I was really curious about this. Now, I didn't get to see any of the testing or further development of what their experiments were. I just helped them make that one shell casing, but I was too curious, So I had to ask Dr. Hashimi. So I sat down in his office once and was quizzing him, because I just had to know, what are we doing here, And he described the whole thing, and described that I'm sure they were working with the military, or trying to figure out what kind of improvised, stuff our enemies could come up with at the time and everything. But what they were telling me is basically this casing would get filled with something like C4, and then there's a copper coil that goes around it and is energized with a high amount of electricity. And then as this explosion progresses in a linear fashion down this tube, the idea is each concentric coil of copper that's energized gets shorted out, and it does something where it sort of compresses the current flow and creates some sort of a pop of electrical discharge, which is a close range EMP. So I thought that was quite fascinating. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see any of their tests, and I don't know if this particular design would even worked. It may not have even worked, but that's kind of what an EMP is on a small scale. Now, a lot of you guys are worried about big EMPs, which would be the case of a nuclear detonation in a low orbit or upper atmosphere, all the way up into space. So yeah, you could have a EMP from something like that as well. But these littler ones, there's really nothing to worry about because it's a close range device. I mean, you'd almost be catching shrapnel would be a bigger concern than your cell phone not working. You see what I'm saying? Because the EMP range of a small one might be 100 meters or something. Maybe it could go a little further. I don't know, but it's not going to be like as devastating as a nuclear EMP. But my philosophy on a nuclear EMP is that you don't really got to worry about that because there would be so much other problems from a foreign nation attack like that your electronics not working would kind of be like small beans. And but that doesn't mean you shouldn't prepare or be informed about how an electromagnetic pulse can occur. We actually had one happen here, and it wasn't from my experiments or anything like that. Our house was struck with lightning, or rather the power lines were struck with lightning, and it happened about 3:30 in the morning, and it just cut loose. I mean, it woke me up. I thought the Russians had hit the big red button. It was loud. And turns out the next day, the electrical crew got here. They flipped the transformers back on the power line, which, by the way, those are just great big electrical coils. So again, anything that has a coil is going to be subject to these tremendous pulses of electromagnetic energy. But come the next day, all of our equipment was damaged, and we have damaged computer power supplies, LED light fixtures, even a couple of incandescents, although the LEDs were a little more prone to damage from an EMP. And so basically what I'm saying is a bolt of lightning is, when it strikes a transformer or causes a close range power surge, it's very similar to the same effect of what an intentional EMP would be. And so tomorrow in the daylight, we're going to go over all the items that this thing screwed up. So this transformer here at the road, it blew a fuse. And then this power line comes all the way up here. This second transformer also blew a fuse. So here's my outbuilding, and you can tell it's metal, right? So it's essentially a Faraday cage. So I only had 2 casualties from the lightning discharge in this building. The solar on the left is grid tied. The solar on the right is just charging a battery bank for lighting, neither of which were damaged. And my solar hot water heater box there, doing fine. Plans for that water heater box right there are available on Etsy. If you type in the code off grid, it's only like $3, dude. So you should do that. So as far as the dang old electrical problems, we had what I would consider a power surge, and it blew this thing apart. Yeah. And then from the EMP, the electromagnetic pulse, I lost this remote control switch. You can see it has the frequency on there, 315 megahertz. So whatever frequency pulsed out from that lightning blast, it fried this. The little antenna wire was touching the floor, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it. But yeah, that was the only casualty in that building. Even with my cell phones, there was cell phones and they're fine. Maybe just because it's a metal building, I don't know, but no problems there. Now I'm over at my folks' place. They're basically my neighbors, and you can see arc tracing off of this grounding wire for the fiber optic. You can see all the little arcs, and we had to get this replaced, and the internal system, all the Wi-Fi system was down and had to be replaced, and our telephone lines blew up too. And that had to be replaced because they've got old landlines, but the landlines were tied in with the fiber and they blew up too. So they were out of communications down here, and it blew some other things up. Here's parts from the telephone line that got blown up. One of these little computer adapters for my computer was in their house and it bit the dust. Any little transformers, you know, anything with a small coil, LED lights, you can see they're burned out on the inside. Some of the LED circuitry blew up. Yep, there's an LED fixture with some arcing. And this microwave bit the dust. And from the shop building, any one of these little LED transformers, they burned out and we had to replace them. Even though the lights or the LEDs themselves are not damaged, but the coils, see, anything with a coil, a sensitive electronic coil, is subject to being blown out from an electromagnetic pulse. Anyways, guys, I hope you learned something. Basically, EMPs are a pain in the butt. Harold thinks so.